Welcome to your favorite channel for crime and mystery enthusiasts. If you're a fan of cases that defy logic and spark endless questions, you're in the right place. Don't forget to support us by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications to stay updated with all our latest content. Today's case takes us back to 1991 to the French Riviera, where a horrifying crime shook the entire nation. The victim, the wealthy and prominent widow Ghislaine Marchal. The accused, her Moroccan gardener, Omar Raddad. This case is more than just a murder. It's a complex puzzle filled with intriguing details, from a mysterious message written in the victim's blood to spelling errors that turned the investigation upside down. Was Omar Raddad a victim of racism and injustice? Or was the evidence clear enough to convict him? Stay tuned as we uncover the secrets of this mysterious case and dive deep into its details. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments about this case that continues to spark controversy to this day. The victim was a wealthy French widow and a prominent socialite. A letter, allegedly written in her blood, accused her Moroccan gardener, Omar Raddad, of her murder. However, a grammatical error in the letter raised questions about whether the accusation was fabricated against the gardener. This case dates back to 1991 and shook France at the time. The wealthy widow was found dead in the basement of her villa in Côte d'Azur. The villa's only door was locked from the outside and secured from the inside. A message written in the victim's blood appeared to accuse the gardener who worked for her. The brutal murder of Ghislaine Marchal and the subsequent conviction of her gardener became one of France's most puzzling murder mysteries, captivating public imagination and sparking widespread attention. Accusations arose that Raddad, an immigrant, was a victim of discrimination. Books and films portrayed his conviction as a miscarriage of justice. In a new twist to the case, the French judiciary has decided to reopen Raddad's case, allowing for a retrial that could clear his name, a claim he has steadfastly maintained for over 30 years. Raddad, now 59 years old, was convicted of stabbing his employer to death, who was 65 at the time, a crime he has always denied. He gained his freedom through a presidential pardon from former President Jacques Chirac after serving several years in prison. However, he remains criminally liable. What are the details of this case? In 1991, Ghislaine Marchal, age 65, lived alone in a large villa, with Raddad tending to her garden. Born into a prominent family, Marchal's parents were resistance fighters against the Nazi occupation, and her second husband inherited a fortune from industrial production. Raddad, on the other hand, was born in Morocco. Illiterate and with limited French proficiency, he had joined his father, who had worked for years as a gardener in the same Côte d'Azur community. Raddad had a small family of his own. According to the New York Times, this stark contrast in their backgrounds added another layer of complexity to the case. When Ghislaine Marchal failed to appear for 2 appointments with her friends on a summer evening that year, her absence raised concerns. Her friends alerted the police, who found her dead, with multiple bruises and wounds, in a locked basement attached to her villa. Inside, a folding bed had been placed against the door, reinforced with a metal pipe. Written in French and in the victim's blood on a door inside the locked basement were the words, "Omar Killed Me." A second message, also written in her blood, appeared on another door with the same phrase, "Omar Killed Me." Over the years, handwriting experts have debated whether the victim herself wrote the messages. Prosecutors and Ghislaine Marchal's family argued that Raddad, who was allegedly addicted to gambling machines, attacked Marchal in a fit of rage after she refused to give him an advance on his wages. They claimed that after Raddad fled the basement and locked it from the outside, Marchal lived long enough to identify her killer and write the message while dying, closing the door behind her out of fear of Raddad's return. It was also noted that cash appeared to have been stolen from her handbag, which was found empty on her bed. However, Raddad maintained his innocence, asserting he had no reason to kill Marchal, who had always treated him kindly. His supporters countered by arguing that the true killer was capable of placing the bed against the door while leaving the basement and writing the 2 messages to frame the Moroccan gardener. They also pointed out that the empty handbag was not definitive proof of theft, as no jewelry or other valuables were missing. Most crucially, neither Raddad's DNA nor his fingerprints were found at the crime scene. Immediately after Raddad's conviction in 1994, some of the issues raised during the trial became public. His lawyer at the time, Jacques Vergès, who was known for taking on anti-colonial cases, invoked the infamous Dreyfus affair. Vergès argued that, just as Captain Alfred Dreyfus was wrongly convicted because of his Jewish faith, Raddad's only crime was being Arab. Inspired by Émile Zola's defense of Captain Dreyfus, Novelist Jean-Marie Ruard formed a support group for Raddad and authored a book titled Omar, The Making of a Guilty Man. Ruard remarked, "The story of a dying woman identifying her killer sounds like a bad Agatha Christie novel." Class tensions continued to surface after the trial, sometimes in unexpected ways. For Jean-Marie Ruard, who also came from a prominent family and served as the literary editor of Le Figaro, a newspaper representing France's conservative establishment, his stance appeared to put him at odds with members of his own class. Now, 3 decades later, new DNA technology has led to a retrial. In 2015, advances in DNA analysis revealed traces from 4 unidentified men at the crime scene. Raddad's lawyer stated that an expert subsequently identified 35 DNA traces from an unknown man mixed with the second message written in the victim's blood. She added, "That DNA must belong to the killer," arguing that it was unlikely to have come from investigators or others who might have contaminated the crime scene. However, Sabine Dugranroot, Marchal's niece and also a lawyer, argued that the evidence may have been handled with less care 3 decades ago, and that the new DNA traces might have come from an unrelated source that contaminated the crime scene. Raddad's supporters, who point out that he has always maintained his innocence, hope that reopening the investigation will prove his exoneration and lead to a retrial. This case, which seemed legally resolved, has unsettled France for a long time. Indeed, the case has troubled France for a long time for several reasons. It involved a brutal murder in an affluent area north of Cannes, contrasting backgrounds of the key figures in the case, the unresolved mystery of the locked room, and a glaring grammatical error in the final message. Instead of using the past participle form of the verb kill, tuer, the writer of the message used the infinitive form, tuer. This error raised significant questions in France about class and language, particularly whether a woman of Marchal's social standing would make such a basic mistake, or whether the accusation had been fabricated against the gardener, who was easily convicted because of his Arab heritage. Raddad's lawyers argued that Marchal, a wealthy and well-educated woman, would not have made such an error. This grammatical mistake has been central to the legal battle from the start. Henri Leclerc, a lawyer who represented the victim's family during the 1994 trial, recalled learning about the murder while listening to the radio in his car. He said, "The journalist reported that the body of a woman was found in the locked basement of her home and that she had left a clue accusing her gardener. What struck me as strange was the spelling mistake. It is a common error among schoolchildren, but would someone of Marchal's social class make such a mistake?" Anne Abley, editor of a 2,628-page French grammar book, noted that the proper use of language has long been regarded as a privilege of the elite. She explained that in 1901, an effort to simplify French spelling to make it more accessible was defeated for political reasons. It was necessary to prevent all those working-class youth from achieving the same mastery of language as the elite, Abley said. For Raddad's supporters, the error was proof that the message was not written by Marchal, but by someone trying to frame the gardener. Dugranroot noted that her aunt, like many women of her generation, did not attend university. Investigators found other examples of her making the same grammatical mistake. "I'm not sure that in the moment she was writing she would have been mindful of all the rules of French grammar," Dugranroot said. Novelist Jean-Marie Ruard agreed with this point. Ruard, a member of the French Academy since 1997, added that even prominent figures, including 7 members of the French Academy, the institution tasked with safeguarding the French language, make spelling mistakes. However, the spelling error took on significant momentum, resurfacing even decades later in book titles, newspaper headlines, and on social media as a symbol of the perceived miscarriage of justice. Dugranroot believes this occurred partly because her family chose to remain silent about the murder. As public opinion turned against them, the family briefly discussed speaking out, but ultimately decided against it. "Because we didn't speak, it became harder to do so over time, and I believe it's now too late," said Dugranroot, who has given a few interviews in recent years. At his original trial, Raddad was convicted and sentenced in 1996 to 18 years in prison. However, in 1998, just 2 years into his sentence, Raddad was released following a request from Moroccan King Hassan II and a partial pardon from then French President Jacques Chirac. Despite his release, he was not exonerated of the murder charges. He was released from prison, but his conviction was never overturned. Despite receiving a presidential pardon that allowed his release from prison, Omar Raddad's conviction for the murder of Ghislaine Marchal was never overturned, leaving him with a criminal record. In June 2021, Raddad filed an appeal to reopen his case, citing new DNA evidence. In 2015, traces from 4 unidentified men were discovered at the crime scene. Raddad's supporters argue that one of these individuals is the true perpetrator, who framed him. His lawyer, Sylvie Nochovich, stated that Raddad still suffers, rarely leaves his home, and has lost enthusiasm for life. Raddad has expressed a desire to avoid media interviews. However, Nochovich added that the decision by the High Court of Appeals to re-examine the evidence has given Raddad renewed hope. This ruling is a step toward overturning the conviction, but the battle is not over yet, she said, expressing optimism that the reopened case might lead to correcting one of the biggest judicial errors of the 20th century. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Marchal's family continues to insist that the former gardener is guilty of murdering the prominent socialite in her Riviera villa. They argue that the DNA evidence is contaminated and maintain their stance from the original trial, where they pointed out that Marchal was known to make grammatical mistakes. Sabine du Grandroute, Marchal's niece and also a lawyer, said in reference to her aunt's murder, "It is not an event from the past that I have learned to live with. It is something that always resurfaces in the present." Du Grandroute, who said she was very close to her aunt, recalled speaking with her on the phone 3 days before the murder. "Her voice still lingers in my ears," she said. Henri Leclerc, the lawyer who represented the victim's family during the 1994 trial that convicted the Moroccan gardener, remarked, "Today, when people are asked to give an example of a wrongful conviction, they immediately mention Omar Raddad. There is not much we can do now to change public opinion." And so, the case of Omar Raddad and Ghislaine Marchal remains one of the most mysterious and controversial in French judicial history. Was Omar a victim of injustice and discrimination? Or was the evidence that convicted him genuine? Despite advancements in investigative techniques like DNA analysis, the case continues to leave many unanswered questions. Now, with the case reopened after more than 30 years, hope remains for uncovering the truth and granting justice to the accused if he is indeed innocent. Until then, this story serves as a lesson in the complexities of human justice and the power of public opinion and media in shaping events. What do you think? Was Omar Raddad innocent, or was the old evidence enough to convict him? Share your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next episode with a new mystery and an intriguing story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and stay updated.